get serious and talk a little bit about the tragedy that happened last week in Lebanon, in Beirut, Lebanon, where there was an explosion that it just tore into that nation that's already been dealing with economic strife, with political corruption, with so many things. And this massive explosion did tremendous damage to the city. The government now resigning, working to put together a new government at the behest of the president of Lebanon, particularly as protests have beset the country in the aftermath of this, but also not just because of the explosion, but because of all the turmoil I was alluding to that has been going on already. Economic strife, you have the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, of course. You've got political corruption, lots going on. To break it all down and get a good understanding of what's happening, I am very pleased to welcome back to Jimmy at the Crossroads. It's been quite some time. A man who is a dear friend. He is an immigrant to the United States of America, originally from Lebanon. From 1986 to 1989, he was Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush's ambassador to Bahrain. And then also George H.W. Bush asked him to come back to help with the diplomatic effort in the First Gulf War. And Ambassador Sam Zakhem, dear friend, and like me, a Coloradan, rejoins us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads. Ambassador, sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jimmy. It's such a pleasure to be with you always.
It is my pleasure, sir, and always a pleasure and a privilege to be with you. But I'd only wish it was under different circumstances. I know for days now you have been consistently on the phone, talking with family and friends that you have back in Lebanon. You've been doing media interviews with outlets in Lebanon. Please give us your sense for what happened with this explosion and where things are at overall in terms of the strife in the country, particularly in the capital city of Beirut.
Well, the investigation is still going on, but there were so much explosives stored at the seaport in Beirut, and when they exploded, some of which it is thought that Hezbollah had also stored at the seaport. And when they exploded, you know the rest of the story. A good part of Beirut was destroyed. The whole section next to the seaport was destroyed. Unfortunately, almost 300,000 out of the 4.5 million Lebanese are homeless. Many homes have been destroyed. So many hospitals that were in the center of Beirut had been destroyed, and the people throughout the country have been, as you alluded, suffered from the coronavirus, from economic slowdown and depression in their economy. And the worst thing, Jimmy, is the corruption that has been prevailing in both the political and the banking system in the whole country.
Yeah, economically, this is truly devastating. More than 150 people have died, but what you're describing here, Ambassador Zakhem, is devastation that is more than just the loss of lives, but loss of livelihoods. You were telling me about the number of homeless, the percentage of the population that have been rendered homeless as a result of this, and what the equivalent would be if it was here in the United States of America, simply as a result of this blast. Can you tell us what you told me?
Yes. Since the population is barely 4.5 million people, when 300,000 people are homeless, this amounts to almost 8 million.
Oh dear.
If it had happened in our country, in America. And the situation with the dollar shortage, the banks are not allowing people to withdraw their money, and they insist on giving them Lebanese currency at the rate of $1 to 1,500 Lebanese pounds. And now the dollar on the black market is almost 10,000 Lebanese pounds instead of 1,500, and there is mass hunger, poverty, and that's why the people are in the streets striking or protesting against the inefficiency and the corruption that is prevailing in the political and banking system.
Ambassador Sam Zakhem, again, former ambassador to Bahrain from 1986 to 1989, someone who's been to Lebanon and numerous, I think almost every country in the Middle East, at least a handful of times, I'm sure. What can you tell us, sir, about Lebanon that the American people may not be aware of? Because, look, in the Middle East, you and I have talked about this many times, where you have countries that are dictatorial regimes. And the question really is, are they going to advance American interests, or are they going to go against American interests? For example, we see Saudi Arabia, it's an authoritarian government, but generally speaking, they're in line with American interests, versus Iran, dictatorial, authoritarian Islamic government. They are trying to undercut American interests and work against us every single way that they can. Most of the countries in the Middle East are like that, with a few notable exceptions that at least have some elements of democratic government. Israel is one, and to at least an extent, Lebanon is. Tell us about the Lebanese government structure and sort of just the way Americans should look at this country that is, as you said, 4.5 million people. That's it. It's small relative to American states, too. But what should we know about it?
Well, Lebanon is smaller in area than Rhode Island, our smallest state in the United States of America. But Lebanon had been traditionally a democratic has a democratic form of government. Unfortunately, though, the seats in parliament are apportioned according to religious affiliation, and there are 18 different recognized religions in Lebanon. The Christians used to be a majority in Lebanon, but like me, there are so many Lebanese Christians have left there. They were forced out by the Ottoman Empire that ruled Lebanon from the middle of the 16th century till 1918, when the World War I ended and the Sykes-Picot Agreement threw out the Turks out of Lebanon and the Middle East, and Lebanon became a protectorate of France. But in the meantime, so many of the Christians left. Out of maybe 73% Christians in Lebanon, now they have less than 30% and maybe even 25%. And the Sunni Muslims and the Shiite Muslims are supported respectively by Saudi Arabia and Iran. Iran supports the Shiites, Saudi supports the Sunnis, and nobody supports the Christians. That's one reason why President Macron of France, visited this past week Lebanon and told them that France is going to go back to its protectorate position of Lebanon, mainly to help the country get back on its feet. But even Macron, who is very close to Lebanon, said we will not we will not send aid to Lebanon unless there is political reforms and
Yes.
unless the present form of government is reformed or changed.
Ambassador Zakhem, I would just like for you to please say, in terms of at least the modern conception, as Macron in France is putting forward this idea of making it a protectorate of Lebanon again, what does that mean in terms of practicality? Like, what would the implications of that be as far as the relationship between France and Lebanon and what France would do for Lebanon?
Well, France could help the Lebanese, most of whom speak French. By the way, I learned the Marseillaise. I learned how to sing Allons enfants de la patrie, the French national anthem, before I sang the Lebanese national anthem in Lebanon, when I was in Lebanon. That was the strong influence of France on the educational system, on the social and the political system. And the people loved France a lot. Then France left Lebanon in 1943, and surely it's not going to go back to be the protector of Lebanon, but they're going to try and help the Lebanese, and it would be a positive thing for Lebanon, because Lebanon is in a very desperate situation now, politically, economically, socially, you name it.
So, again, we're talking with former Ambassador of Bahrain, Sam Zakhem, who also was involved in diplomatic affairs during the First Gulf War, has been well-traveled in the Middle East multiple times a year, typically, and so certainly someone who knows the region very well. In terms of Lebanon, I mean, obviously, we're seeing the aftermath of this blast in Beirut that killed more than 150 lives and also has resulted in, you said, so many who have been 300,000 plus who have been rendered homeless, obviously more economic malaise to come. But so what we're seeing now in terms of the protests in the streets really is something that sort of has been boiling over maybe or piling up over time. And now this is just maybe the straw that broke the camel's back, where they're like, okay, now how are you handling this? We need you to get your act together, government. And that means dissolving the current cabinet, putting in new individuals into that position, which they're in the process of identifying the group, and dealing with these economic reforms. So there are a lot of different dynamics in play, and I think that people just really need to understand that this isn't just about the blast. It seems that the blast is a precipitator of the protests that have been already building up over recent months and years.
Here. You said it eloquently, much better than I could say it. It has been boiling for so long, over a year, and well, it's over a year since last June. So, and the people are fed up, and there is one silver lining in the whole thing. Muslims and Christians are together in the streets, and they're carrying one flag, the Lebanese flag, and they're saying they're not, Lebanon had suffered for almost 25 years of a civil war between Muslims and Christians, and now they seem to be together, mainly Sunnis and Christians of all denominations, opposed to Hezbollah. The only one that is not on the street supporting this popular movement, asking for change for the sake of the nation and united together, all of them are together except Hezbollah, the Shiites now, who in more ways than one control every aspect of the political system in Lebanon now.
So, in other words, the reason why they wouldn't be allied with the Sunni Muslims and the Christians who are protesting with the one flag is because the Shiite Muslims in Lebanon are those who control the power structures right now, the institutions of government. So why would they want dramatic reforms if they're benefiting from the way things are now?
You're right. Since 43, there was a national covenant called Al-Mithaq Al-Watani. The national covenant said that dictated that a Christian Catholic Maronite should be president. The prime minister should be Sunni, and the speaker of parliament should be Shiite. According to the popular vote, the Shiites now control parliament, and the speaker of parliament is called Nabih Berri, a person who I know very well, has been there forever, almost 40 years. And yes, Hezbollah has the power of dictating who's going to be president, and President Aoun, the president of Lebanon, is allied with Hezbollah. And even though he tell you, no, I am not allied with anyone, the truth is he is allied with Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is running the show.
Now, to what extent is Hezbollah a proxy for Iran, particularly in the political context of Lebanon? Because we know in a lot of different areas, Hezbollah being of the same sect of Islam as Iran, follows a lot of the dictates from that country. To what extent is Iran exerting influence over Hezbollah, particularly in its political role in Lebanon, Ambassador Zakhem?
Unfortunately, a very strong role. One thing about the head of the religious head of the Shia was Imam Ali. Ironically, he was such a very, very good man. He said, if you're not my brother in religion, you're my brother by birth, that God created you like he created me. Unfortunately, the Iranian regime is very much a very destructive regime now, even to its own people. And I believe the Iranian people who were at one time America's best friends in that whole region of the world next to Israel and Lebanon, the mullahs have controlled them, but eventually, if the Iranian people have their own say, they will again be America's best friends in that region, because generally the Iranian people are wonderful people. Their political system, their mullahs are terrible.
The Ayatollah, absolutely, without question, and they are malignant actor, to be sure, in the region. We have talked with you before on this program, Ambassador Sam Zakhem, about exactly that and how they are stirring up tremendous strife and trouble all around, not just in the Middle East, but also in parts of Africa as well. Just a couple quick final questions for you, sir. How long do you think it may take to form a new government? And once they reform the new government, which particularly means the cabinet, will that satisfy things, or are there going to need to be constitutional reforms or more systemic changes that will happen? I suspect it's the latter.
Well, if I may comment about what you said about Iran, it was so right. Iran is the Iranian regime is a troublemaker all over. And I conveyed this message to the Trump administration at the White House, and cautioned the president not to talk about the Iranian people in a negative way, to talk about the mullah regime in Iran in that way.
And let me just say, before you go to my question, I just want to say, to your point, to amplify your point, Ambassador, about President Trump and what he has said in terms of distinctions with Iran. He has actually tweeted out in Farsi before, which shows that he's trying to speak directly to the Iranian people, heeding advice from individuals like yourself to make that distinction clear.
Yes, well, thank you for saying that. It is
Absolutely.
the truth. And I'm glad that he changed his tone and talked against the Iranian regime and not the great people of Iran who have a
Yes.
great culture.
Now, as for the
Now,
government.
Lebanon is in such a very, very deep trouble. By the way, the prime minister had just resigned 3 days ago, and he himself is asking for a dissolution of parliament. The Christian Phalange Party asked all its members of the Lebanese parliament to resign. A number of wonderful friends of mine in government in Lebanon have resigned also, calling for reform and asking the president to also resign because they need a huge change. I mean, a change from the bottom to the top in terms of allowing the people who are protesting in the streets to have their voices heard and to meet their not all their demands, but to meet their legitimate demands for reform and against political corruption. And by the way, the judicial system is very corrupt in Lebanon. I am a victim of that. They stole my money in the bank in Tripoli, SGBL, it's called Société Générale du Liban. I sent some money so my widowed mother could get its interest, and they stole the money. And they have stolen the money of so many Lebanese of the diaspora overseas, and that really is a horrible system. The people have been attacking the banking establishments throughout the country too.
Yeah. Well, and I know that you mentioned that to me a few years ago that this was going on, and I'm so sorry that you're still dealing, as so many Lebanese from the diaspora have been experiencing, still dealing with this matter of money being just taken from you. I mean, that's really what's going on, money being taken from yourself and many others. But final question for you, Ambassador Sam Zakhem, and then some final words. When it comes to what's next or what to be watching for moving forward for Americans who, are stirred by what we saw with the explosion and the tragic consequences of that, what should we be watching for from here, particularly that may have an impact on the region and or may impact American interests abroad?
Well, our ambassador, Ambassador Shea, is a lady recently sent to Lebanon, has asked American citizens to get out of Lebanon. If the people realize that America is a decent nation, is a good country, and that the American people are probably the most generous people on the face of earth, and they love the United States of America. If you permit me, as an immigrant
Please.
who on his knees thank God for the privilege to live in America, my heart bleeds when I see Americans spoiled, the best fed, the best clothed, the best housed, the most free people on the face of earth. It aches me to see them striking in the street, rioting in the streets when they are so privileged and when they should thank God that they live in America. This is the greatest country on earth. Any person who ever met me anywhere in the world, when they knew I was an ambassador, the first question they would ask, how can I get a visa to go to America? We're the envy of the world, yet our people are so ungrateful. They take America so for granted rather than taking America in gratitude and praising God for the privilege to live in the land of the free.
I think those are wonderful words to help wrap things up here, Ambassador Sam Zakhem, and I so appreciate it. You are one of the most patriotic Americans I know, to be sure. And now we go back, I think, about a decade or so in our friendship, which is truly remarkable to think about. But one thing that I do want to say as we close is that I know mine and so many others' thoughts and prayers are with Lebanon, or with the people of your original home country who have been struggling so deeply in the past year or so, especially, and now over the course of the past week. And so our best wishes most certainly go out to Lebanon and to all of those who are suffering in that country, because look, we need to make sure that to the best extent we can as human beings that we are helping one another and supporting one another. And we can only hope and pray, I'm sure, that political and economic reforms, in addition to everything else that needs to happen over in Lebanon, will take place, because there are good people there who have been dealt a very horrid hand, and we need to give them all the support we can.
Here, here. And, so many people have reached out to me, Jimmy, with prayers and with offers to help. So many. And even as we talk, there are people now trying to send clothes and all kinds of medicines, drugs, if you may, prescription drugs, so the poor people in Lebanon could use them. They need them badly.
Absolutely. I think anybody who can provide any sort of support right now to the Lebanese people would certainly be appreciated and is most definitely needed. Ambassador Sam Zakhem, thoughts and prayers to all the people of Lebanon, especially your family. I know it's a pretty large Zakhem family over in Lebanon, but my best wishes to everyone there all together, but also a special best wishes to your family and condolences as well as we witness this very
and to you time. And yours as well, and God bless America.
Absolutely. I end every show by saying exactly that. Ambassador Sam Zakhem, we'll catch up soon, my friend. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, Ambassador Sam Zakhem joining us here on Jimmy at the Crossroads, coming to you in partnership with the Washington Examiner, a very difficult time and situation in Lebanon. And we truly appreciate Ambassador Zakhem's contributions in taking the time today to help us discuss this very important issue and break it down. Thanks for watching this clip of Jimmy at the Crossroads. Don't miss more engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe today to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel. You do not want to miss our live show. Thanks for your support.
I got Jimmy at the Crossroads, making sense out of no sin.